And in order to get a nice 90-degree bend, because this is 2mm thick, we can't just bend it. It will crease up horribly, it will split the laminations in the card itself, and probably won't even work. It won't form a nice 90-degree bend. So we need to cut a V out of the side of it. So if you imagine we've got a bit of card like that, we need to cut a V out of it. We don't want this V to go all the way through. We just want a channel which allows us to bend around that gap. So I've got here a mat cutter, which is used for cutting the mount board that goes on the inside of picture frames. And for a picture frame, you want to cut the rectangle in the middle out and leave a nice 45-degree bevel around the inside. So this has a blade mounted at 45 degrees. The problem is it sticks out a good about 6mm down, far too much for our purposes. We would just cut all the way through, and we don't want to cut all the way through. We want to leave a little bit off the card at the bottom. So we need to get some bits of scrap and pad them underneath our mat cutter so that when we extend that blade, there's enough sticking out the bottom. You can see that little tiny point just there. There's enough sticking out past the card to actually cut, but not enough sticking out to actually sever all the way through a piece of card. So the way we need to find this out is being very careful, because these blades are generally quite sharp. We'll stack bits of this card on top of it until we find that we've, looking down the sole, either completely obscured that blade, or like this, we're almost there. You can see it a little bit more clearly on this side. So what I'm going to do is, instead of this 2mm card, I'm going to make the last layer of this stack out of some thinner card. And like that, there's still some blade sticking up, but it's not enough to go all the way through a bit of 2mm card. It'll leave us a 0.5mm at the bottom. So I need to just cut myself another rectangle out of this scrap here. All this is for is spacing. It doesn't really matter whether it's neat. So now we've got the correct thickness, we need to also work out how far forwards this blade extends. Because what we also need to do is cut out a little notch in the front of our pieces here, that far, which will accommodate the blade. What we're going to do is we're going to use this front of the cardboard as a runner against our ruler, so that we can place this down and then cut our 45-degree bevel such that the point of the blade runs along the line we've got our ruler against. But we just need to cut a notch out of all of these pits so that the blade can extend down through this gap towards the card underneath. And I'm just going to use this glue roller to put some glue on these to stick them together. And the last step is to take some packing tape, because this will give it a nice slippery base. And this extends out the side, and we will stick our tool underneath it, on top of it, rather. So what we need to get the whole thing propped up on another bit of card so it's off of the table. Extend the blade out all the way. I'll use this other thicker ruler. We need to make sure that the front of our card is up against that ruler, because this front edge of the card is what we're going to run against the ruler when we actually cut the lines. And then we position this over the top so that the blade, the tip of the blade, is also extending just as far out as the ruler. And as you can see, this does mean that this card sticks out a little bit in front, but that's fine, that's expected, as long as that tip of the blade is also touching the ruler. And then we just tape this down onto here, because it's just a temporary fixture. We just need to make sure that it is secure enough for running these cuts. And we can test that on our bit of scrap here, just to make sure we got it right. So if I pencil in a line, and I will measure it, just so I know that I can check afterwards, I'll measure it 5 centimeters from the end. And then I can position my ruler in place along that line, the same as I would if I were actually going to cut to separate it. Slide my tool out, and then just run it along the ruler in position. And these blades often catch a bit, to be honest. I've never liked them for cutting mats, but thankfully this is all going to be on the inside of a cardboard box, so it doesn't matter too much if it's a little bit messy. What we care about is that 45-degree line is cut in exactly the right place. You can see that we've got a nice groove cut in our board there. The tip of the groove is indeed exactly 5 centimeters away from the end, and this bends around a lot nicer. So there's our 45-degree box corner. It's still delaminating a bit here, so what that tells me is it might actually be beneficial to make this a little bit thinner.